Welcome back everyone. This is a new fanfiction I'll be doing here on my channel. What if I was reborn into the world of One Piece but became a spy for the world government? This fanfiction is not what you would expect. Get ready and tune in, and thank you for the support. The guy looked to be about 16 or 17 years old, but he was quite tall, a whole head taller than Lewis. Because of this, Lewis himself stepped back a little, not liking to look up at people. The man in front of him definitely resembled a cat. That was the impression Lewis got. His body was round, and his arms and legs seemed long and plump. His face was also snow white and plump. He had rather short and curly black hair, which was slightly tousled. His eyes were narrowed, and the corners of his mouth were slightly raised, which gave him a rather strange expression, making him look even more like a cat. "Who are you?" Lewis asked, puzzled by the uninvited guest. "I'm from West Blue. I just arrived and noticed that you did too, so I thought I'd say hello, meow," the boy replied, still smiling. Although his smile wasn't warm, it seemed like it was a fairly normal expression for him. "My name is Shiro, meow." After these words he extended his hand. "Lewis, from South Blue." Lewis introduced himself and shook his hand. His hand was strong, not at all what one would expect from his appearance. His palms were thickly calloused, indicating the serious training he had undergone. And despite being the first, Shiro had managed to notice Lewis, showing that he had quite good sensitivity and perception. Considering that this guy took first place among the West Blue cadets after completing his training, he is most likely far from weak. "Lewis, what a great name, meow," Shiro admired, "you're incredible." "Lewis, brother, you only look like you're 12 or 13 years old, and you came in first at the South Blue training camp." "That's impressive, meow." "Not bad," Lewis answered modestly, not understanding what they were trying to get from him. "Want to eat together? Training starts tonight, so we need to eat well, meow," Shiro suggested. "Okay," Lewis agreed, thinking this was a great opportunity to learn more about the place. The training camp's dining hall was luxurious and took up a large space. And when Lewis and Shiro entered, there were already about 10 people sitting there. Most of these people were sitting alone, taking up an entire table, and the food on their plates looked like they were small mountains. Lewis and Shiro looked like real outcasts here. They found a free table and started ordering food. Lewis looked at the menu, which was full of delicious dishes. He realized that even after he came to this world, he had never tried anything like this. It seemed that CP9 really did not skimp on the pleasures for its agents. Could it be to protect the agents from the temptations of the enemy? After placing his order, he noticed that Shiro was constantly looking around, and his always narrowed eyes were slightly opening, revealing his narrow pupils. "What are you looking at?" Lewis asked. "Look, Lewis, brother," Shiro leaned forward, half bending over the table and showing his characteristic smile. "These people are our rivals, meow." "Rivals?" Lewis looked around. Everyone sitting at the tables looked young. The oldest of them was probably in his early 20s, Shiro, at 16 or 17, clearly fit in with the crowd. Which is not to say about Lewis, who was the youngest among those gathered. That's right. Although new people are accepted into the CP9 training camp every year, but as far as I know, Lewis, brother, Shiro chuckled, in the past 3 years, no one has been able to successfully graduate from this camp. And if you look at the previous 5 years, only one person was able to graduate, meow. Huh. Lewis was surprised. Such a low graduation rate really shocked him. "Yes, because CP9 is an elite organization," Shiro explained. "At their peak, there were no more than 20 agents in their ranks, hee. So in a way, CP9 is even stricter than CP0. Plus, the number of people in CP0 greatly exceeds that of CP9, so it's only natural that the requirements are stricter, meow." Shiro licked his lips and looked at Lewis, squeezing his chubby cheeks. "Besides, I believe that you, Lewis, will be much better than those who got into CP0. Hearing his words, a thought instantly flashed through Lewis's mind. Not only does this guy know me, he also knows about Wade, who was taken to CP0. This fat guy clearly has some information. "Do you know all these people?" Lewis asked back. "Yes," Shiro nodded confidently. "These are students from 4 camps across the seas. One from the Paradise base, one from the World Watch base, and 13 survivors from CP9. There are only 19 people in our class, meow." 19. Louis was surprised. This is not a small number at all, quite the opposite. Yes, there is one good candidate in this group with outstanding leadership qualities, so there were more survivors than expected. But don't pay attention to that, Louis, you are actually very strong. Shiro smiled again. Look, that man, he pointed at someone across the cafeteria, muscles, muscles. You've got a full set of muscles, dark skin, thick lips, and dreadlocks on his head. He's eating quickly, and there are several other students sitting around him. Stuart, he currently has the highest Doriki in the entire CP9 training camp. He's 19 and his Dorix is already over 1,000. Even if we add the 6 of us, his Dorix would still be top-notch. Louis glanced at Stuart. His steely muscles hid explosive power. He looked like a Tekai master, a serious opponent. But he didn't look 19. Of course, there are strong ones among us too. Meow, Shiro spoke again. Besides you, Louis, there is one more who is worth paying attention to. Then he pointed to the girl sitting at the next table. She was a beautiful girl, about 20 years old, with a curvy figure, wavy brown hair, and an icy expression on her face. Every bowl of food she ate felt like it was tearing her to pieces. The girl noticed Shiro's gaze and stared at him with her cold gaze. Wow. How scary, meow. Shiro quickly looked away. It seems like girls don't like you very much. Louis chuckled. You don't want to mess with girls like that, meow. Shiro shook his head, leaning towards Louis and quietly adding, this is Erica from the Marine base. She killed over a third of the students in this batch, and despite her violent tendencies, she's very strong. Oh. Louis looked at Erica. She was slim and a really beautiful girl, but her gaze was full of malice, as if she was ready to kill him just for looking in her direction. Hey, Louis, brother, are you interested in her? Haha, Louis, only 12 years old, but already so ambitious, meow. Shiro cringed a little in surprise, but this girl is very proud, it won't be easy to win her over, meow. Proud. Louis chuckled, that's not a fact. Indeed, if she is a proud person, then why did she end up in a place like this? Well, she's definitely not stronger than you anyway. Shiro laughed. I think out of everyone here, Louis, you're the strongest, meow. I don't think so. Be honest, Louis, you know, cats have very keen intuition, meow. Haha. Of all the people in the training camp, the one who was most problematic for Louis was probably this fat man next to him. Thanks to his unique abilities, Louis had good perception, and Stuart, who was called the strongest in the camp, and Erica with her menacing gaze did not inspire the same fear as this Shiro. However, Louis clearly interested Shiro in something, which is why instead of seeking communication with others, he instead sought to establish a relationship with him. Which actually confirmed his sincere intentions. When the time for idle chatter was over, the chef pushed a cart with huge plates of food, and soon their table was filled with a variety of dishes. Well, it's time to start, because we have a long training ahead of us, meow, Shiro said with a smile and began to quickly absorb the food. As soon as he opened his mouth, Louis immediately noticed that Shiro had extremely sharp teeth. Shiro himself, noticing the look of his interlocutor, smiled widely, showing off his snow-white teeth, which looked quite creepy. Seeing this, Louis just shook his head and also began to eat. Soon he began to eat so fast that only an afterimage remained of his hands. Without stopping for a second, he stuffed huge chunks of food into his mouth, chewing them only slightly. His body did not require thorough chewing of food. Thanks to the control over his body, his esophagus easily handled large volumes, quickly sending them to the stomach, where the stomach acid immediately began to digest the incoming food. Then his liver secreted bile, and his pancreas secreted pancreatic juice, which carried out further processing of fats, sugars and proteins, after which absorption occurred in the intestines. Louis was able to digest food quickly. Although he had not yet fully mastered the process, thanks to the same Akiken, he could control his stomach and liver, thereby digesting most of his food quickly. The acid secreted by his stomach allowed him to swallow food almost without chewing, and by the time the second portion of food arrived, the first was already digested. However, the acid that could digest food so quickly also caused damage to the stomach. Even though Louis could control it, the stomach was not a supernatural organ, so he acted with extreme caution to avoid getting burned. Louis could clearly feel the energy beginning to spread rapidly throughout his body. Food had provided him with energy, but the process had been slow and imperceptible. But now Louis felt the energy flowing to him at an incredible speed, and his intuition told him that he was becoming stronger. Wow! This is just incredible, Louis! Shiro exclaimed, his eyes wide. How can you eat so much with such a thin body, meow? Is this the power of the Seimei Kiken? Do you have something against my body? Louis replied without raising his head. Ha ha ha, sorry, Louis, brother, Shiro laughed. I didn't mean anything bad, meow. I just thought that since you're so strong, we could work together, meow. Huh, what exactly do you mean by that? About how the screening system is set up in this training camp. Soon, the meal was over, and Louis, under Shiro's watchful eye, ate the equivalent of 20 servings of food. In terms of appetite, he had already proven himself to be a true protagonist. After lunch, they rested for a while, and Shiro took Louis to the training grounds. 6 people came from around the world to the camp, while CP9 originally had 13. In the end, 19 people gathered. There are 18 boys and 1 girl in the group. The gender ratio is extremely disproportionate, but this doesn't really matter to anyone. Despite the fact that there were differences among the participants, Stuart's group united cohesively while the others remained isolated. This was evident in their arrangement, 2 clear sides. We have another piece of trash here, so 6. The instructor, who looked to be about 50 years old, was bald. He was wearing a long coat that exposed his bare torso, on which many noticeable scars adorned. You 6 attack me when. Louis saw how the girl named Erica attacked the instructor without the slightest hesitation, pointing her fingers straight at his head, while radiating an incredible threat from her. Huh, are you trying to hit me with your finger? The instructor chuckled. Pumps. Erica hit the target right on target, but the instructor remained in place without receiving a single scratch. Quote. Erica's eyes widened. Bang. And then, with a slight movement of his hand, the instructor threw her away, causing her to flip over in the air and land on the spot where Louis had just stood. Huh. Louis met her gaze. Her eyes were filled with rage, hatred, and the desire to kill him right then and there. She looked at him as if he had found out a secret he shouldn't have seen, and now she had to eliminate him. Listen, before you attack, let me finish. You are forbidden to use Rokushiki, the instructor said without turning towards Erica. Louis nodded, realizing that this was a test for Doriki. Rokushiki had many derivative techniques, one of which allowed a person to test Doriki by being hit. I'm coming, meow. Shiro grinned and rushed forward, and surprisingly, even with such a heavy body, he was faster than Erica. He flew in and kicked the instructor in the stomach. The instructor took 2 steps back and nodded. Shiro, 17 years old, Doriki 970. Excellent. Louis was surprised, thinking, this guy is close to 1,000, impressive. He also noticed that as soon as the instructor said that number, Stuart immediately stared at Shiro, and his companions looked shocked. Of all those gathered, only Stuart was stronger than Shiro, while the others were significantly behind. However, Louis knew that Shiro had hidden trump cards and he did not show all that he was capable of. Meanwhile, 3 more people quickly attacked the instructor, using fists and feet. John, 20 years old, 460. Jack, 18 years old, 490. Brown, 21, 480. Shish, just trash. After these words, the 3 people with gloomy faces returned back. Hey! Erica, rising from the ground, rushed forward again, delivering a kick and aiming straight at the instructor's head. But even after such a blow, he still remained motionless, and there was not a scratch on his body. Erica, 20 years old, Doriki 730. More trash. There was a hint of disdain in the instructor's voice, but the students from the camp thought otherwise. This level of Doriki was one of the best among them. The last one. The instructor looked at Louis. Louis didn't hesitate, and pushing off, he rushed forward, delivering a powerful punch to the instructor's forehead. Firm. Very firm. Louis, 12 years old, Doriki. The instructor looked at Louis with a smile. 640, yes, we have geniuses too. I thought so, Louis, meow. Shiro looked at Louis, his eyes sparkling. The others were completely perplexed. They found it hard to believe that Louis was only 12 years old, and his Doriki were already higher than most of them. Only Erica looked at him with a hateful look, which made it seem as if she wanted to destroy not only him, but everyone in her path. Lewis nodded to the instructor and returned to the line. He was surprised too. The last time his Dorics were tested was 6 months ago, when he almost reached the 500 mark. In 6 months, he had progressed by more than 100, which could be considered a good result. But he also knew that he could advance even faster. Testing is complete. We begin official training, the instructor announced. Newcomers, go to the 5th training ground. There you will be taught to use all the Rokushiki styles. What Lewis knows about Rokushiki techniques is that they were developed by the Marines. And although it is unknown who exactly created them, it is certain that their perfection required the efforts of many people. Thanks to which Lewis was able to comprehend the Seimei Kiken without outside help. But he underwent training, where he was given an understanding of the basics of the technique. In turn, even the simplest Renkyaku technique requires careful preparation and understanding, and only geniuses like Monkey D. Luffy can do without special training. In addition, Lewis knew that there were 6 basic techniques: Geppo, Shigen, Renkyaku, Soru, Kami-e, and Tekka. These techniques are universal, suitable for both attack and defense, and their creator was certainly a genius. Although we will have the opportunity to learn all the Rokushiki techniques, you shouldn't expect that you will be able to learn them all at once. Not everyone will be able to pass the exam in a month. After all, even among those who have completed training in CP9, not everyone can fully master even one of the techniques. As far as I know, in our training camp, only Stuart has mastered more than 2 techniques, Shiro said. On the way to the training hall, Shiro kept on talking as he followed Lewis. Well, of course, geniuses like you, Lewis, are an exception. In a month, they will have an exam. Shiro knew about this, and told Lewis about the exam system in CP9. Every month there are checks, consisting of theoretical and practical tests. The theory includes the knowledge needed to be a spy, and the practical part is, of course, combat. Each of these parts is of equal importance. Shiro also explained that if they were to fight each other, they would need to hold back to leave a chance for their opponents. Every month there is an exam, and the last one is eliminated based on its results. The training lasts for 1 year, which means that out of 19 people, only 7 will reach the final exam, not counting those who dropped out for other reasons. After all, as we know, instructors do not stand on ceremony with anyone. Those who drop out may be lucky, and if they have good abilities, they will get into other CP departments, but if a person is too weak, he will go to the bottom of the sea. The 5th training hall was not far away. And the 6 reached it in just a few minutes. But in that short time, they managed to split into 5 groups. Erika walked ahead, Lewis and Shiro followed her, and the other 3 lagged behind, positioned at a distance from each other. The lack of unity is completely normal, because each of them was a rival to the other. Having waited for them, one of the instructors immediately began teaching Rokushiki. Each of the new recruits at least a little, but mastered one of the techniques, and Lewis believed that Shiro had mastered far from one. However, even though they all knew something about Rokushiki, their level of training varied greatly. The instructor went through each technique in detail, explaining the learning process. The entire course took 6 hours, 1 hour per technique, after which the participants could practice on their own. Lewis understood why, even with the opportunity to learn all the styles, not everyone could master them. The instructor explained things clearly, but did not go into detail, and only a genius could master all the techniques. An ordinary person would have to experiment a lot and constantly turn to the instructor for advice. But full-fledged training would begin tomorrow, and they did not have enough time. So, when the others had not yet fully recovered, Lewis approached the instructor to clarify all the unclear points. The instructor, answering his questions, suddenly smiled and said, "Are you Lewis?" "Yes," Lewis replied. It didn't come as a surprise to him. The instructors at the South Blue training camp had told him that CP9 would be handling his affairs. So the news had probably already spread, and besides, if he was still participating in training, that meant everything was fine. "It looks like it's true. You really are a genius," the instructor said admiringly. Although Lewis asked only a few questions, each one was critical to learning. All of his questions were precise and insightful. By the time the training was over and everyone headed to the dining hall for dinner, it was already dark outside. However, despite it being nighttime, the other group was still training, and Lewis could hear their clear commands as he passed the area. Entering the huge dining room, 6 people sat in the corners, immersed in food. Lewis, what technique do you want to learn first? Meow. Shiro asked while eating. Lewis was absorbed in his meal and did not answer his question. By this time, he had roughly estimated his appetite. 20 servings of food were enough to fill him up and saturate his body with the necessary energy. In order not to waste precious time, he increased the pace of eating. The CP9 chefs were not at all surprised by such an appetite. After all, in this world there are giants 6 to 7 meters tall, or people who are capable of absorbing simply incredible amounts of food. Oh, sorry, meow, I'm just curious. When Lewis didn't respond, Shiro scratched his head in embarrassment, looking genuinely upset. Lewis, don't think I'm trying to reveal your secrets, meow. Only Shiro knew what his true intentions were. What about you, Shiro? Lewis took a bite of chicken and changed the subject, asking, where do you plan to start? Well, the thing is, I'm pretty stupid, Shiro replied with a good-natured smile, so I decided to learn everything at once, meow. They say that all 6 techniques are interconnected and can help with learning. Lewis clearly remembered that this guy had previously stated that it was unwise to learn multiple techniques at once. However, he ignored it and continued eating his food instead. At that moment, Shiro began to tell him various funny stories from the world of CP, about the connections and conflicts between the divisions, as well as the long-standing intrigues between CP9 and CP0. In the midst of his story, he even stood up and sang a couple of lines, which looked rather unusual and even interesting. Even before arriving at the training camp, Lewis had decided what technique he wanted to master in addition to Tekai. It was not an offensive technique like Shigen or Rankyaku, nor was it a technique that moved Sora, but Kami-e, which, like Tekai, was a defensive technique. Lewis always followed a strategy in which he put his survival first. Kami-e turned out to be the most suitable technique for Lewis at this stage. After all, among all 6 styles, this technique requires the user to have the greatest control over the body. And even Tekai, which also requires complete control, cannot compare with it in this regard. Tekai strengthens the muscles, while Kami-e makes the body flexible, allowing it to dodge attacks, which brings it closer to the Seimei Kiken. Because Lewis had already mastered the Seimei Kiken, he did not have to face the difficulties that beginners experience when learning Kami-e. Even with methods that stimulate the body's response, beginners would not be able to achieve visible success in this. However, Lewis, thanks to his skill and control, advanced at great speed, taking advantage of the Seimei Kiken techniques he had previously learned. Using Kami-e, he could control not only his muscles, but his bones as well. He looked in the mirror and, smiling, touched his face, which had become softer and more pliable. He noticed that since he had started practicing Kami-e, he had made amazing progress. And if his instructor knew about it, he would almost certainly stop doubting his ability to Seimei Kiken. While others were still learning, Lewis had already made significant progress. After mastering Kami-e, he noticed that this technique combined perfectly with Seimei Kiken. After all, both of these techniques are based on methods that allow one to control the body, and when combined with each other, this control reaches a new level. Lewis could manipulate his body, changing his shape and appearance as he pleased, a real ability for a future spy. He wasn't going to stop there, though. Mastering the basics was just the first step. There was still a lot to improve: speed, control, and the body parts used. Another advantage of Kami-e was that in this state, Lewis had much better control over his body, which accelerated the process of mastering the Seimei Kiken. Thanks to this, he was once again convinced that he had chosen the right path. Along with his training, he continued to work on controlling his digestive system. And with the help of Kami-e, he had almost mastered the spleen, and the next step was mastering the intestines. So it was safe to say that there was not much time left until he had complete control. A month passed, and the time Lewis spent in hard training flew by completely unnoticed. Life at the CP9 training camp was tough. Every day he would wake up at 5 in the morning, starting with 30 laps around the camp. This was followed by theory classes, which taught the necessary spy skills. Unlike the training in the South Blue, these courses were more specialized and in-depth. Each member of CP9 was highly skilled, unlike most pirates, who were often illiterate. After the theoretical lessons, physical training began, where professional instructors taught Lewis and others how to develop their bodies to the limit. Practical training included the different fighting styles that a spy must know in order to hide his true calling if necessary. Then came free training, the longest part of the day, from 5 in the evening until nightfall. Anyone could use the machines, and there was no one to supervise them, which explains the enormous size of the camp. Thus, a whole month passed, during which Lewis's control over the digestive system advanced to the small intestine. Very soon he will be able to achieve complete control, and then the efficiency of assimilation of nutrients will be maximum. During this time, no clashes occurred. After all, fights or any conflicts are absolutely forbidden here. Because of which even the hot-tempered and constantly irritated Erica could only destroy everyone with her hateful gaze. Finally, it was time for the exam. The first day of which was devoted to theory. Although it was called a written test, there were actually few questions. Most of them were about customs, etiquette, and basic skills of different regions. The focus was on practical tasks, role-playing, interrogation, and stealth assassination. For a spy, these skills are sometimes more important than strength. Oh, everything is lost, Shiro began to complain, leaving the auditorium. I missed one thing, it will definitely affect my grade. That's it, I'm screwed, I'll definitely be expelled this time. Lewis didn't comment. Shiro always acted like this, somewhat reminiscent of the typical bore from Lewis's past life. The next day was the time for the practical exam. The test model was simple. A fight, the loser continues to fight until there is only one left. The first winners received the maximum points, after which the points began to gradually decrease, the only exception being for the last place, where a 0 was put. Oh, God. Let me be lucky, Shiro whispered, standing next to Lewis. Not Lewis, please. To be honest, Lewis didn't want to fight Shiro either. This man was the only one he couldn't really understand. Even Stuart with his strength couldn't compare to him. Besides, it was very likely that Shiro had some special skills or abilities. Opponents were determined randomly. 19 people fought, and one was left out of the game. The one who was left out of the pair was unlucky, because even if he won, he would be recorded as a participant in the second round. After everyone had identified their opponents, the instructor looked at John's pale face and said, "John, your opponent is Shiro." Shiro was delighted. Hooray! How lucky I am, it's not Lewis. His opponent, John, didn't even have half of Shiro's strength, so he had no reason to worry. Lewis, the instructor said, calling him by name. Lewis stepped forward and pulled out a piece of paper that had Erica's name written on it. Shiro, although at a distance, shouted, "Lewis, you're in luck. This girl is no match for you." However, as soon as these words were spoken, Lewis immediately felt an icy gaze directed at him. This gaze belonged to Erica, who was constantly looking at him. The battle was raging in the arena. Shiro versus John, and from the outside it seemed like everything was going in one direction. However, that direction was related to John's relentless pursuit of Shiro. Shiro screams and flails as John tries to catch up with him with powerful blows. However, each blow leaves only huge cracks in the training field slabs. The reason Shiro can't answer him isn't because he's afraid of John, it's because it's just a game of cat and mouse, Lewis noted. He had long noticed that Shiro, although he looked friendly, hid a cruel heart under his smile, which this situation demonstrated well. John, on the other hand, does not have outstanding strength, which was also easy to notice. His doriki is at an average level, and he has mastered only one Rokushiki technique, Tekai. And even then, he does not use it very confidently. However, this man seemed to be able to make Shiro run away. And Shiro's face reflected the emotion of fear, as if he really could lose at any moment. John, on the other hand, felt that Shiro was not as strong as he thought, and that he only needed to work a little, and he would achieve the long-awaited victory. Game over, Shiro suddenly said, and the fear on his face instantly disappeared. Then he smiled, showing his sharp teeth, and from his eyes, you could tell who the real hunter was here. What? John was surprised. Bang! The blow landed right in the face, and John, losing control of his body, flew back with a crash and crashed into the ground, falling silent. Oh, I think I went a bit too far. Shiro realized, slapping his forehead. Now John won't be able to participate in the second round. Well, it's okay, you can apologize to him later, Lewis said as Shiro retreated to the edge of the arena. To which he immediately received the answer, it was so dangerous. I almost lost. John is really very strong. Really? What a pity, Lewis said indifferently. I'd be interested to see the look on your face if you lose. Hey, Lewis, this is too much. Shiro laughed. Among all the participants, Lewis only paid attention to Shiro and Stuart. Both of them possess overwhelming power compared to their opponents. And during this battle, Shiro did not show even a drop of his power, which is why Lewis still has no idea how strong he is. Luckily, Stuart was next, and he would definitely show his strength more openly. His opponent was one of his close associates. And although they were from the same company, Stuart nevertheless decided to fight with all his might. Perhaps he thought that he needed to demonstrate all his talents in order to earn more attention from the instructors. Rumor had it that by this time he had already mastered 3 of the 6 techniques, and it seemed to be true, as he used 2 techniques immediately after the fight began, instantly destroying his opponent. Shave. His body sped up and he became almost invisible. Tekai. Then Stuart's fist hardened and he slammed it down on his opponent, who didn't even have time to react. The opponent screamed as loud as if he had been hit by a locomotive, and at the same time he screamed, he was thrown back with force, falling to the ground and never getting up again. The battle lasted only a second, instant destruction, that was how it could be described from the outside. And although Stuart was cruel to his comrade, Lewis heard from Shiro that behind closed doors Stuart warned the others to be careful with his comrades, otherwise he would not be merciful. Given this, it was not surprising that in such a disorganized camp, several people joined him. Lewis nodded. Not bad, this guy is really strong. He has a great base and has studied the techniques well. The speed of his shave is amazing, and even if his opponent was Lewis, it would be extremely difficult for him to dodge. However, in addition to the stunning speed of shave, Stuart was able to use Tekai at the same time, which shows his deep knowledge and hard training. Wow. Amazing, the combination of techniques, just incredible. Shiro said laughing, you can do that too, Lewis. But instead of answering, Lewis looked towards Erica and said, what do you think about her? You said she was strong. Huh, strong. Ha ha ha. Shiro laughed cheerfully and fell silent. Next pair. Lewis and Erica, the instructor said, writing down the results. Come on, Lewis, don't give this cutie a chance. Shiro encouraged him. I'm 12. Lewis turned around and looked him in the eyes. Ha ha ha. Yeah, right. Shiro laughed again, then added, then just beat her. During this time, Lewis gradually realized who Erica was. She was the only girl in this camp, and instead of receiving special attention, she faced harsh discrimination from the instructors. Perhaps this is why she has some mental problems. Also, she has this murderous look when she looks at everyone around her, especially Lewis. Even if she wants to kill him, she shouldn't show it so obviously. Maybe she experienced something terrible in the past that makes her unable to control her emotions, but if that's the case, she's hardly fit to be a spy. Stuart, who do you think will win? Asked one of Stuart's comrades, not embarrassed by the cruelty with which he treated his friend. Does it need to be said? Of course, this girl. This smug kid may be a genius, but he's only 12, how can he be strong? I think so too. Shut up, Stuart said, looking at the people standing next to him and discussing the upcoming fight. Even if he's only 12, his Doriki is higher than all of you. Yes. They immediately fell silent. But this little guy's chances are really quite low. After all, the age difference is a real abyss. Stuart smiled coldly. Begin, said the instructor, watching the upcoming fight with interest. Unlike how Shiro and Stuart mercilessly dealt with their opponents, this fight promised to be serious and spectacular. Bang! The arena shook under her feet, and Erica jumped into the sky. Yeppo, although she was not yet a master of this technique, she already used it quite skillfully. Which showed that this girl really had quite good abilities. Bang bang bang. Erica moved very quickly, And after touching the surface several times, she appeared behind Louis like a ghost, pointing her index finger straight at the back of his head. Combination of maneuverability and attack power. Smart choice, Louis thought. Without turning around, he continued to look forward, as if he hadn't noticed the attack. What? Erica was surprised as her opponent's body spun like a leaf in the wind and he easily avoided her blow. And then, his body took on an even stranger shape, and twisted like a snake, wrapping itself around her. What? Stuart exclaimed in horror. This is Cammy E. How is this possible? He gritted his teeth. This little. This is it. The instructor was also shocked by what he saw. What a scary kid. The Cammy E is very difficult to control, and it would require a whole host of special skills to achieve such a level of flexibility, let alone perform such precise movements. You shouldn't have come near me. Cammy E. Louis's body completely restrained Erica's movements, and suddenly a head that had already returned to normal looked out from behind her shoulder, saying this phrase. Wow. Genius, just genius. Louis, is this the end? Damn it. Erica screamed, and her right hand, which was not yet immobilized, changed direction and rushed straight towards Louis's back, which at that moment was wrapped around her chest. Thank you for support and listening to the whole video. If you want to read more chapters for this fanfiction, head over to my Patreon. I have more fanfictions there than I am posting here. I'll also be doing early releases of content there as well.